You know what nobody tells you about retirement in Australia? The age pension alone is not enough to live in expensive cities, and most retirees do not have nearly enough superannuation to bridge that gap. That is just reality, uncomfortable and inconvenient reality that the retirement industry does not want to discuss. The median superannuation balance for Australian men retiring is $270,000. For women, it is significantly worse at $157,000. These are not made-up numbers. This is data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics on actual retirement balances. At a safe 4% withdrawal rate, which is what financial advisors recommend, so you do not run out of money before you run out of life, that is $10,800 per year for men, or $6,280 per year for women. Add the age pension of approximately $29,000 annually for single retirees, and you are looking at total annual income of $39,800 or $35,280 to live on for the rest of your life. Let me put that in weekly terms, because that is how most people think about money. $765 per week or $678 per week. Now, does that sound like a lot? It might, until you start actually budgeting for real life. In Sydney or Melbourne, that does not work, not even close. The math collapses immediately. Median rent in Sydney right now is over $600 per week for anything remotely livable. That is $31,200 annually. If you are a woman with typical super, that is 88% of your entire retirement income gone on rent alone before you have bought a single grocery item, turned on the heating, filled a prescription, or paid for anything else. Even if you are a man with median super, you are spending 78% of income on rent. That leaves $8,600 annually, $165 per week for food, utilities, healthcare, transport, clothing, medicine, and everything else life requires. It is not just unworkable, it is absurd. It is mathematically impossible to live with any dignity. Melbourne is not much better. Brisbane is marginally cheaper, but still prohibitively expensive on pension-level incomes. The capitals have priced out the majority of Australian retirees, and nobody in the industry wants to say it out loud because it destroys their business model of selling expensive retirement products. The retirement industry, and yes, it is an industry worth billions, with property developers and financial planners and retirement village operators all extracting profits, has a vested interest in pretending that retirement in expensive locations is achievable for everyone if you just plan properly and save adequately. But the data shows most Australians do not save adequately by those standards, and telling them they have failed does not help them retire successfully. The truth that nobody is marketing is this. For the majority of Australian retirees with modest super balances, retirement in capital cities or fashionable coastal destinations is financially untenable. Not difficult, not requiring sacrifices. Literally impossible without experiencing genuine poverty. But here is what actually works, what actually solves the math problem. Retiring to genuinely cheap cities where your pension and modest super actually cover your costs comfortably, with money left over for quality of life. Not just affordable, not just reasonable, not just good value. Cheap. Think rock bottom cost of living where you can buy a house for under $200,000, achievable on super balances that most people actually have, and then live comfortably on the pension alone. Where rent is genuinely under $250 per week if you need to rent. Where total living costs are $25,000 to $35,000 annually, including housing, food, utilities, healthcare, transport, and everything else. These are not glamorous places. They are not the coastal paradises in retirement magazines. They are not trendy. They are not where wealthy people are retiring. But they're actual cities with populations over 10,000, with hospitals, medical services, infrastructure, and shops, where retirement mathematically works on normal Australian incomes instead of requiring wealth. So I went deep into the actual cost data, not the marketing projections. I used real estate data on median house prices and rental costs. I compared grocery prices using Woolworths and Coles online shopping tools. I averaged utility costs from energy comparison sites. I checked council rates on local government websites. I reviewed healthcare availability from state health department data. I examined quality of life metrics from census data and resident surveys. I read about 9,000 Reddit threads and Facebook discussions from retirees living in regional Australian cities, explaining in detail what things actually cost, not what budget websites estimate, but what they actually spend on groceries, utilities, transport, and healthcare. I spoke with property managers, real estate agents, and retirees in these cities about actual living costs on the ground, including the hidden expenses that budget calculators miss. What I found is sobering, but also genuinely liberating for anyone stressed about retirement finances. These 10 cities are genuinely, seriously, dramatically cheap. We're talking total living costs of $25,000 to $35,000 per year, including absolutely everything: housing, food, utilities, healthcare, transport, insurance, entertainment, and contingency. On the age pension alone, $29,000, you can live in these cities without financial stress if you own a house. You are not rich. You are not taking overseas holidays. But you are comfortably housed, adequately fed, and not stressed about bills. Now let's be completely honest up front. Some of these cities are cheap because they are struggling economically. Some are declining as industries contract. Some are isolated, hundreds of kilometers from major cities. Some are hot and harsh. Some can feel depressing if you are used to urban vibrancy. There are reasons they are cheap. Markets work, and places that everyone wants to live in are not cheap. But they are all functional cities where you can actually live with dignity, not tiny towns of 500 people where services do not exist and you are completely isolated. These are places with hospitals and medical centers, with supermarkets and shops, with community services and infrastructure. If you are approaching retirement with modest super and you are genuinely stressed about whether you can afford to retire at all, these cities deserve serious consideration. They are not compromises. They are mathematical solutions to the retirement income problem that most Australians actually face. Let's get into it. I'm going to give you real numbers, actual budgets, not vague claims about affordability. At number 10, we have Maryborough, Queensland, a regional city that is affordable and offers reasonable services. Population is approximately 16,000 people. It lies about 250 kilometers north of Brisbane, inland from the Fraser Coast. The median house price is approximately $180,000. For a city of 16,000 people, that is genuinely cheap. Median rent is $220 per week for a 2-bedroom unit. That comes to $11,440 a year. On an age pension of $29,000 minus rent of $11,440, you have $17,560 remaining for food, utilities, transport, healthcare, and everything else. This works out to $337 per week for all non-housing expenses. It is tight, but it works if you are frugal. If you buy a house outright for $180,000 using super, your housing costs are just council rates and maintenance, maybe $3,000 to $4,000 a year. Now you have $25,000 plus a year for living expenses. That is $480 per week, much more comfortable. Healthcare is available at the base hospital with emergency services, local medical centers, general practitioners, and a pharmacy. For routine care, you are covered locally. Services include Woolworths, Coles, a library, community centers, and clubs. Everything you need for daily life exists. The climate means hot summers, 30 to 35 degrees Celsius, and warm winters around 20 degrees Celsius. That generally means no heating costs, and that matters on tight budgets. The trade-off is that it can be hot and it is quiet. Entertainment is limited and many young people leave. But for retirees focused on affordability, Maryborough is functional. Cost breakdown: housing, owning, $3,500 a year for rates and maintenance. Food, $8,000 a year, frugal but adequate. Utilities, $2,500 a year. Transport, $3,000 a year for a car and basic running costs. Healthcare, $2,000 a year for gap payments and pharmacy. Other, $10,000 a year. Total is $29,000 a year, exactly the age pension if you own outright. Maryborough works mathematically for retirees with modest super who can buy outright. Number 9. Moree, New South Wales. A cotton town with rock-bottom prices. Population approximately 10,000. Northwest New South Wales, about 630 kilometres from Sydney. Median house price is approximately $160,000. Median rent is $200 per week, which is $10,400 annually. The math: the pension is $29,000 minus rent $10,400, leaving $18,600 for everything else. That is $357 per week. Workable. Buy outright for $160,000 and you might spend about $3,000 annually on rates and maintenance, leaving $26,000 for living expenses, which is $500 per week. Comfortable on the pension alone. Healthcare is a hospital with emergency services, a medical centre, and a pharmacy. Serious cases go to Tamworth or Armidale, but routine care is local. Healthcare is available. Services include Woolworths, IGA, shops, a library, pools, including artesian hot pools, which are popular, and clubs. Basic but functional. Climate has hot summers, 35 to 40 degrees Celsius regularly, and mild winters, 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. Heating costs are minimal, but cooling is essential. The trade-off is that it is isolated, about 6 hours from Sydney. It is hot. The economy is agriculture-based and not growing, but it is genuinely cheap. Cost breakdown: owning. Housing, $3,000 per year. Food, $7,500 per year. Utilities, $2,800 per year for air conditioning use. Transport, $3,500 per year. Healthcare, $2,000 per year. Other, $10,200 per year. Total is $29,000, and that works on the pension alone. Moree is mathematically viable for ultra-budget retirement. At number 8, we have Gunnedah, New South Wales, a regional centre with affordable living. Population is approximately 13,000. It sits in northwest New South Wales, about 470 kilometres from Sydney. House price is approximately $240,000. Median rent is $260 per week, which is $13,520 annually. The math: the pension is $29,000 minus rent of $13,520, which leaves $15,480 for everything else. That is $297 per week. Tight, but if you buy for $240,000, your housing costs drop to maybe $3,500 annually, leaving $25,500 for living, which is $490 per week. Much better. Healthcare includes a hospital with emergency services, multiple medical centres, and a pharmacy. Access is solid for a town this size. Services include Woolworths, IGA, local shops, a library, an aquatic centre, and clubs. Everything you need exists. Climate has hot summers, 32 to 35 degrees Celsius, and cool winters, 12 to 15 degrees Celsius. There are 4 seasons, and the weather is manageable year-round. The trade-off is that it is about 5 hours from Sydney. The local economy is focused on agriculture and mining services, and it is not growing significantly. Still, the town is functional and affordable. Cost breakdown: owning. Housing, $3,500 per year. Food, $8,000 per year. Utilities, $2,500 per year. Transport, $3,200 per year. Healthcare, $2,000 per year. Other, $9,800 per year. Total is $29,000. The pension covers everything if you own. Gunnedah works for retirees who have $240,000 saved for a house purchase. Number 7. Port Pirie, South Australia, an industrial city with collapsed housing prices. Population is approximately 18,000. It sits about 230 kilometres north of Adelaide. Median house price is approximately $140,000. Median rent is $230 per week, which is $11,960 annually. The math: the age pension of $29,000 minus rent of $11,960 leaves $17,040 for everything else. That is $327 per week. Tight, but workable. Buying instead, for $140,000, housing costs drop to maybe $2,800 annually, leaving $26,200 for living, or $503 per week. Comfortable. Healthcare includes a hospital with emergency services, a medical centre, and a pharmacy. Adelaide is 2.5 hours away for specialist care. Services include Coles, IGA, shops, a library, and other facilities. Functional regional city services. Climate: hot, dry summers, 35 to 38 degrees Celsius, and mild winters, 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, Mediterranean style. The trade-off: Port Pirie has reputation issues from historic lead contamination. The industrial base is declining. It is not pretty, but it is cheap and functional. Cost breakdown: owning. Housing, $2,800 per year. Food, $7,800 per year. Utilities, $2,800 per year. Transport, $3,000 per year. Healthcare, $2,200 per year. Other, $10,400 per year. Total, $29,000. The pension alone works. Port Pirie is mathematically compelling despite reputation issues. At number 6, we have Mo, Victoria, an affordable Latrobe Valley town that can feel a little depressing. Population is approximately 8,000. It sits in Gippsland, about 150 kilometres east of Melbourne. Median house price is approximately $250,000. Median rent is $260 per week. That is $13,520 annually. Using the math, the pension is $29,000 minus rent of $13,520, which leaves $15,480 for living. That is $297 per week. Very tight. Buying for $250,000 and housing costs of about $3,800 annually leaves $25,200 for living, which is $484 per week. Workable. Healthcare is accessible. Latrobe Regional Hospital in Traralgon is nearby. There are medical centres and a pharmacy. Healthcare access is good. Services include Woolworths, shops, a library, pools and clubs. Basic services exist. Climate is mild, with cool summers around 24 to 26 degrees Celsius and cool winters around 10 to 13 degrees Celsius. Comfortable year-round. The trade-off: the Latrobe Valley has problems. The coal industry collapse has hit the region. Unemployment is high, and there are social and drug-related issues. It is struggling. But it is close to Melbourne, about 2 hours away, and it is genuinely cheap. Cost breakdown for owning. Housing $3,800 per year. Food, $8,500 per year. Utilities, $2,400 per year. Transport, $3,000 per year. Healthcare, $2,000 per year. Other $9,300 per year. Total $29,000, the pension covers it. Mo can work financially if you can handle the social issues and the industrial decline. Number 5. Lithgow, New South Wales. A Blue Mountain city with affordable living. Population approximately 13,000. The town sits in the Blue Mountains, about 150 kilometres west of Sydney. Median house price is approximately $320,000, higher than some, but still manageable. Median rent is $280 per week, which is $14,560 annually. The math: the age pension of $29,000 minus rent of $14,560 leaves $14,440 for living. That is $277 per week. Very tight for rent and daily costs. Buying for $320,000 with housing costs of maybe $4,500 per year would leave $24,500 for living, which is $471 per week. Workable but not comfortable. Healthcare includes a hospital with emergency services, medical centres, and a pharmacy. Sydney specialists are 2 hours away by car or train. Local services include Woolworths, Coles, Aldi, shops, a library, and other facilities. Overall good services for a regional city. Climate is cool temperate, with mild summers of 24 to 26 degrees Celsius and cold winters of 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. There are 4 seasons, and heating is required. The trade-off is this: Lithgow has rough areas, so choose location carefully. It is foggy in winter, but it is close to Sydney, 2 hours by train, which matters for family access. Cost breakdown for owning. Housing, $4,500 per year. Food, $8,800 per year, slightly higher due to location. Utilities, $3,000 per year. Reflecting heating costs. Transport, $3,000 per year. Healthcare, $2,000 per year. Other, $7,700 per year. Total $29,000, which barely works on the age pension. Lithgow is marginal financially, but it offers proximity to Sydney. At number 4, we have Nil, Victoria, a tiny Wimmera town that is extremely affordable. Population approximately 1,800 in Western Victoria, about 380 kilometres from Melbourne. Median house price approximately $110,000. Median rent is $150 per week, which is $7,800 annually. The math: the age pension of $29,000 minus rent of $7,800 leaves $21,200 for living. That is $407 per week. That is comfortable on rent. If you buy for $110,000 and housing costs are maybe $2,200 annually, that leaves $26,800 for living, which is $515 per week. Very comfortable on the pension alone. Healthcare includes a small hospital, a medical clinic, and a pharmacy. Serious care requires travel to Horsham, 40 kilometres, or to Melbourne, about 4 hours by road. Services include a supermarket, a bakery, a post office, and basic shops. Minimal but functional. Climate brings hot summers, 35 to 40 degrees Celsius, and cold winters, 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. Extreme temperature swings mean you will need both heating and cooling. The trade-off is that Nil is tiny and isolated. Melbourne is about 4 hours away. This is proper regional isolation, and entertainment options are limited. But it is absurdly affordable. Cost breakdown: owning. Housing, $2,200 per year. Food, $7,000 per year. Utilities, $3,200 per year for heating and cooling. Transport, $4,000 per year because you need a car and travel distances. Healthcare, $2,500 per year for travel to specialists. Other, $10,100 per year. Total, $29,000. The age pension alone covers everything comfortably. N-Hill is mathematically excellent for ultra-budget retirement if you can handle the extreme isolation. Number 3. Peterborough, South Australia. Railway town with extremely affordable prices. Population approximately 1,600 people. Located in the mid-north of South Australia, about 250 kilometres from Adelaide. Median house price approximately $85,000. Median rent is $160 per week, which is $8,320 annually. Using the numbers, a pension of $29,000 minus rent of $8,320 leaves $20,680 for living, which is $397 per week. That is comfortable on rent alone. If you buy for $85,000 and housing costs are maybe $2,000 annually, that leaves $27,000 for living, which is $519 per week. Very comfortable on the pension alone, with potential to save. Healthcare facilities include a hospital with emergency services, a medical centre, and a pharmacy. Adelaide is 3 hours away for specialist care. Hospital services are available locally. Local services include a Foodland supermarket, bakeries, a post office, a library, and clubs. Basic but adequate. Climate is hot and dry in summer, with temperatures between 35 and 40 degrees Celsius. Winters are mild, between 15 and 20 degrees Celsius. It is a Mediterranean climate with minimal heating costs. The trade-off is that Peterborough is tiny, population 1,600 and declining. The railway industry that built the town is gone. Young people leave. It is quiet and aging. But it is absurdly cheap and functional for retirees. Cost breakdown for owning. Housing, $2,000 per year. Food, $6,800 per year. Utilities, $2,600 per year. Transport, $3,500 per year. Healthcare, $2,300 per year. Other, $11,800 per year. Total $29,000. The pension covers everything with a significant comfort buffer. Peterborough is mathematically exceptional for ultra-cheap retirement. Number 2. Broken Hill, New South Wales. A remote mining city in terminal decline, but absurdly cheap. Population, approximately 17,500. Far western New South Wales, 1,150 kilometres from Sydney. Median house price, approximately $150,000. Median rent is $180 per week. That is $9,360 annually. The math. The age pension, $29,000, minus rent, $9,360, leaves $19,640 for living. That is $377 per week. Workable. Buy for $150,000 and housing costs might be $2,500 annually, leaving $26,500 for living. That is $509 per week. Comfortable on the pension alone. Healthcare includes a hospital with emergency services, a medical centre, and a pharmacy. Serious cases require travel to Adelaide, 5 hours away, or flying to Sydney. Services include Woolworths, IGA, shops, a library, and local clubs. Reasonable services for a remote city. The climate is extreme. Scorching summers, 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, and freezing winters down to -5 degrees Celsius. Harsh. The trade-off is clear. Broken Hill is dying. The main mine is winding down. The population is declining, and young people are leaving. The isolation is extreme. Adelaide 500 kilometres. Sydney 1,150 kilometres. It is harsh and remote, but it is cheap and offers city-level services. Cost breakdown for owning per year. Housing, $2,500 per year. Food, $8,500 per year. Remote groceries are more expensive. Utilities, $3,500 per year for heating and cooling. Transport, $3,800 per year. Healthcare, $2,500 per year. Other, $8,200 per year. Total, $29,000 per year. The pension covers everything. Broken Hill works mathematically if you can handle extreme isolation and a harsh climate. At number 1, we have Whyalla, South Australia, a steel city in economic crisis with the absolute cheapest overall living costs in Australia while maintaining proper city infrastructure. Population approximately 22,000. On the Spencer Gulf Coast, about 380 kilometres northwest of Adelaide, about 4 hours drive on decent roads. Median house price approximately $120,000. Let that sink in. For the price of a deposit on a unit in Melbourne or Sydney, for the price of a used car, you can buy an actual house with walls and a roof and a yard in a city of 22,000 people with full infrastructure. Median rent is $240 per week for a 2-bedroom unit. That is $12,480 per year. Let us do the detailed math, because this is where Whyalla becomes compelling. Renting scenario: a pension of $29,000 minus rent of $12,480 leaves $16,520 for all other living expenses. That is $317 per week for food, utilities, transport, healthcare, medicine, clothing, and everything else. It is tight. You are budgeting carefully, but it is mathematically workable if you are frugal. Buying scenario: buy a house for $120,000 using superannuation. If you have $160,000 in superannuation savings, you can buy outright and still have a $40,000 buffer for emergencies. Your ongoing housing costs drop to roughly $2,400 per year. That is council rates of approximately $1,800 per year, plus average maintenance costs of approximately $600 per year for a low maintenance property. Now your pension of $29,000 minus housing costs of $2,400 leaves $26,600 for all other living expenses. That is $511 per week for everything. That is genuinely comfortable on the pension alone. You are not rich, you are not eating out regularly or taking holidays, but you can afford adequate nutritious food. You can heat and cool your home properly. You can run a car. You can afford prescriptions and general practitioner visits, and you have a buffer for unexpected expenses. Here is why Whyalla is number 1 for cheapest overall. It is the best combination of rock-bottom prices plus proper city infrastructure and services. Healthcare: hospital with emergency department and inpatient services. Medical center with multiple general practitioners, you can actually get appointments without waiting weeks. Pharmacy that is well stocked. Adelaide is 4 hours away for specialist care, which is manageable for quarterly specialist visits if needed. Services: Woolworths and Coles are both present. Competition means reasonable prices. IGA as well. Multiple other shops covering basics. Library with internet access. Aquatic centre with a pool and programs. Community centres, returned and services league clubs and other clubs. Everything you need for daily life genuinely exists and functions. The city has infrastructure despite the economic struggles. Sealed roads, street lighting, regular garbage collection, functioning sewerage and water, maintained parks and facilities. You are not in some failed town where nothing works. The city still functions. Climate: hot, dry summers regularly hitting 35 to 38 degrees Celsius, but the Spencer Gulf location provides some sea breeze relief. Winters are mild at 15 to 18 degrees Celsius daytime temperatures. Heating costs are minimal. It is a Mediterranean-style climate without the extreme cold that drives up heating bills. Here is the detailed annual cost breakdown for someone who buys a house for $120,000 and lives on a pension of $29,000. Housing costs $2,400 per year. Council rates, approximately $1,800 per year. Average maintenance, approximately $600 per year, assuming a well-maintained purchase. Food, $6,500 per year. $125 per week on groceries, basics, not luxury items. Achievable at Woolworths and Coles with careful shopping. Pension discount days help. Utilities, $2,800 per year. Electricity, approximately $1,800 per year. Air conditioning in summer is necessary. Water, approximately $600 per year. Internet, approximately $400 per year. Essential for staying connected. Transport, $3,200 per year. Fuel, approximately $2,000 per year. Local driving and quarterly Adelaide trips. Registration, approximately $800 per year. Maintenance and repairs, approximately $400 per year average. Public transport is limited. A car is essential. Healthcare, $2,300 per year. GP visits, approximately $400 per year. Prescriptions, approximately $800 per year. Specialist visits, approximately $500 per year. Health insurance, $600 per year. Other, $11,800 per year. Clothing, $800 per year. Household items, $1,000 per year. Entertainment and social, $1,500 per year. Phone, $600 per year. Insurance, home and contents, $900 per year. Contingency and buffer, $7,000 per year. Total, $29,000, exactly the pension amount. The budget works. It is tight, but genuinely functional. You are covered for all necessities. Plus, you have a contingency buffer for unexpected repairs, a hot water system failure, or new glasses. Now here is the massive caveat, and you need to understand this clearly before considering Whyalla. The trade-offs are significant. Whyalla is genuinely struggling economically. The Whyalla Steelworks, which employed thousands and sustained the city's economy, has been through multiple crises, ownership changes, and closure threats. The current owner has stabilized it, but employment is a fraction of what it was. The population is declining and aging rapidly. Young people leave for Adelaide, Perth, or interstate as soon as they finish school because employment opportunities are limited. The median age is well over 40. Schools are consolidating. The vibe is one of managed decline rather than growth. There are visible social problems. Unemployment is high, officially around 8 to 9%, but real unemployment, including discouraged workers, is probably 12 to 15%. Some areas have crime and drug issues. The city has rough patches you want to avoid. You need to choose your suburb carefully. It is hot in summer, 35 to 38 degrees Celsius regularly, sometimes pushing 40 degrees Celsius or more. If you have health issues worsened by heat, this is a real problem. Air conditioning is non-negotiable, which drives up electricity costs. The isolation from Adelaide is real. It is 4 hours by car. If you have family in Adelaide, they are not visiting casually. You are not popping down for lunch. Every visit requires planning and a full day of driving. If you need regular specialist care, those quarterly trips to Adelaide are time-consuming and tiring. The city is not attractive. The steelworks dominate the landscape. The industrial aesthetic is present. There is pollution. It is not a place you live for beauty or amenity. You live there because it is cheap and functional. But here is who Whyalla works for. Retirees with $120,000 to $160,000 in superannuation who can buy a house outright. Retirees without extensive superannuation who are comfortable renting for $240 per week. Retirees whose priority is financial security over location prestige or family proximity. Retirees who can handle heat and isolation. Retirees who do not need a vibrant social life. I talked to a retiree who bought a 3-bedroom house there for $115,000 5 years ago, using his superannuation payout. He is 73, single, and lives entirely on the pension. He said, "Whyalla is not pretty or exciting or prestigious, but his pension covers absolutely everything with about $150 per week left over that he saves. In 5 years, he has built a $40,000 savings buffer for when he eventually needs aged care or major medical expenses. He is not stressed about money. Ever. He can afford his prescriptions. He can afford to fix the car when it breaks. He can afford the occasional trip to Adelaide to see his daughter. He has savings growing every month. For him, that financial security and lack of stress is worth living somewhere declining and industrial. That is the Whyalla calculation. Trade location and amenity for genuine financial security in retirement. City infrastructure and services at rock bottom prices. That is why Whyalla is number 1 for cheapest retirement." So there you have it. The 10 cheapest cities to retire in Australia, ranked by total annual cost of living. Let's be brutally, uncomfortably honest about what we are actually looking at here. These cities are cheap for reasons. They are not hidden gems that nobody has discovered. They are cheap because they are struggling economically, because they are isolated from major population centres, because they are declining as industries contract, because the climate is harsh, or because some combination of all those factors makes them places that most Australians actively do not want to live. Markets work. Supply and demand work. Places that everyone wants to live in, Byron Bay, Noosa, Hobart, Melbourne's inner suburbs, are not cheap precisely because everyone wants to live there. But, and this is the crucial point, they are still functional. They have hospitals with emergency services. They have medical centres where you can see general practitioners. They have pharmacies. They have supermarkets where you can buy food. They have infrastructure, roads, water, sewerage, electricity, and garbage collection. They have community services and facilities. You can actually live in these places, not just survive in isolation. Let us look again at those median super numbers: 270,000 for men, 157,000 for women. Those are not failures. Those are normal, typical Australian retirement balances. Most people do not have 800,000 or $1.2 million in super. Most people have modest 5 or low 6 figures at most. With those balances, you can buy a house outright in most of these cities, and buying outright is the key to making retirement work on the pension. Once housing costs drop to just rates and maintenance instead of rent or mortgage payments, suddenly the pension of $29,000 annually becomes sufficient to cover living expenses. You are not living luxuriously. You are not eating at restaurants regularly. You are not taking international holidays. You are not driving a new car. Housed securely in property you own. Fed adequately with nutritious food. Able to heat and cool your home appropriately. Able to run and maintain a car for transport. Able to afford prescriptions and healthcare. Building a small contingency buffer for emergencies. That is not poverty. That is actually successful retirement on modest means. The alternative, which is what the retirement industry often pushes people toward, is renting in expensive coastal towns or staying in capital cities where the pension does not cover costs. That creates a retirement defined by constant financial anxiety, where you are choosing between heating and medicine, where any unexpected expense becomes a crisis, where you are one car repair away from genuine hardship. Which is actually better? Living somewhere cheap and functional without financial stress, or living somewhere fashionable while constantly worrying about money? For many retirees, the honest answer is the former. Now, these cities require trade-offs. You need to be clear-eyed about what you are accepting. Economic struggles. Many of these cities are declining economically. Jobs are disappearing. Young people are leaving. The vibe is often one of managing decline rather than pursuing growth. If you need vibrant economic energy around you, these places will feel depressing. Isolation. Many are hours from major cities. Family visits require planning and travel. Access to specialist healthcare requires trips. You cannot just pop into the city for an event. You are committing to distance from urban centres. Climate challenges. Many are hot in summer, sometimes extremely hot. If you have health conditions worsened by heat, this matters significantly. Some are also cold in winter. Energy costs for heating and cooling need to be factored in, but they also offer significant benefits. Financial security. The pension covers costs. You are not stressed about money constantly. You can build savings. You have a buffer for emergencies. The pace of life is slower. There is less stress, less traffic, less noise, less chaos. For many retirees, that is actually desirable. Community matters. Smaller populations often mean stronger community connections. People know each other. There is genuine social fabric, not the transient anonymity of big cities. Safety is real in many of these places. Most are quite safe for typical activities. You can walk to shops without constant concern. Crime rates are often lower than in urban areas. Accessibility is important to check. These are actual cities or large towns, not remote outback locations. Services exist. Healthcare is accessible. You are not completely isolated. Here is practical advice if you are considering any of these cities. Visit first. Do not buy based on internet research alone. Visit for at least a week. Stay in a short-term rental. Walk around. Go to shops. Talk to locals. See if you can actually handle living there. Research suburbs. Within each city, some suburbs are much better than others. Talk to local real estate agents honestly about which areas are safe and well maintained versus which have problems. Assess healthcare. Check what medical services actually exist. Talk to the hospital about wait times. Find out which general practitioners are accepting new patients. Understand how far you would travel for specialist care. Consider contingencies. You may be buying somewhere affordable, which is great, but factor in that you might eventually need to sell and move to access aged care or be closer to family. Can you sell the house reasonably easily? What is the market like? Test the climate. Visit in the hottest part of summer and the coldest part of winter if possible. Make sure you can tolerate the climate extremes. Calculate honestly. Do a real budget with actual costs. Use online shopping to check grocery prices. Call local utility companies for rates. Check council websites for rates costs. Make sure the math actually works with your specific situation. These cities are not for everyone. They are probably not even for most people. The majority of retirees will find ways to stay in or near major cities, will rely on family support, or will make other arrangements. These towns may suit retirees who have modest superannuation balances, $120,000 to $300,000, are willing to prioritize financial security over location prestige, can handle some isolation from major cities, do not need extensive social or cultural amenities, can tolerate challenging climates, want to eliminate financial stress from retirement. The retirement industry will not talk about these places because there is no profit in helping you retire affordably. The profit is in selling retirement villages with $600,000 entry fees, managing investments for ongoing fees, or developing lifestyle communities at premium prices. Affordable retirement is what most Australians actually need, not what makes the industry money. These cities are not glamorous. They are not prestigious. They will not impress your friends or family. But they offer something genuinely valuable: financial security in retirement, based on incomes that most Australians actually have, not theoretical wealth that most do not. Whether that trade-off is worth it depends entirely on your personal priorities, your health, your family situation, and what you value most in retirement. For some people, it is an obvious yes. For others, it is an absolute no. At least now you know the options exist and what the actual numbers look like. If you made it this far, hit subscribe, for reality-based retirement content that deals with actual Australian incomes, not fantasy wealth. Comment which city surprised you most with how cheap it is, or whether you would consider any of these for your own retirement. See you in the next one.